Beginning transmission. This is the Chaos Community Broadcast, a show about failures and how to navigate complex socio-technical systems so you can surf the chaos instead of succumbing to it. This broadcast, as well as all of our previous broadcasts and other content, can be found on our website, chaos.community. I'm your host, James Wickett.
And I'm your host, Casey Rosenthal.
Well, today we are continuing our series on the book Chaos Engineering, System Resiliency in Practice. We have with us a contributing author to the book, John Allspaw, who wrote the chapter People in the Loop. Now, you may know him from his days at Flickr, where he broke the internet with his talk in Velocity in 2009, doing 10 deploys a day, or his successful run and career at Etsy. Or you may know John from his many O'Reilly books and his chairing of the Velocity Conference for many years, or his current work at Adaptive Capacity Labs. But in many ways, I personally have benefited from your career, John. I know many others have as well. Really, your talks and your books have served as a blueprint for me on how to run systems and teams across the globe. And really, I feel like teams across the globe have had that same experience, and it's really an honor to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I'm really excited about what you all are doing these days.
Okay, James, are we rolling?
Yeah, Casey, that's what we've been doing. That was the intro. We've been rolling since then.
Okay, great. Just cut that out and post. So John, first of all, I want to say that it's because of you that I am enrolled in the master's program in human factors and system safety at Lund University in Sweden. For that, I will be sending you my tuition bill, and I appreciate prompt payment. What does that program mean to you? Did it fundamentally change how you think about system safety? Or is it merely a piece of paper to ensure that you can win Twitter arguments by an appeal to authority on the subject?
Well, that's a very good question. I certainly, wouldn't it be great if you could win a Twitter argument with anything? But no, it's the former. It certainly wasn't something that I did in order to advance my career or make more money. It was certainly a genuine pursuit of understanding the world in a different way, maybe more than one way. And I got the support of my boss at Etsy when I was CTO to do the program. It is not a stretch to say that the program was pretty life-changing for me. I had done a lot of I had in my own time sort of amateur scholar on some of the stuff that I learned there. But what really nailed it was talking to all of these other folks who had similar interests from all these other domains, and that's really the big part of it.
And your thesis came out of that. One of the many reasons Nora and I really wanted you to contribute to the book was because of your master's thesis, Trade-offs Under Pressure, Heuristics and Observations of Teams Resolving Internet Service Outages, which I've read almost half of the first section. So one of the themes of your chapter in the book is that we can't rely on automation to build resilience, because resilience as an adaptive capacity is context dependent. And it makes me think of all these people out there who don't understand what an adaptive capacity is, who are too reliant on automation, who don't take the time to think about the context dependencies that make incidents unique and saturating contributing factors in our responses during an incident. All of those people that have that linear outlook, clearly they are making hominid mistakes to the detriment of the experience of the rest of us. Is there a way that we can somehow remove those bad apples from the process, or possibly create some sort of repeatable algorithm or support tools to eliminate them, since those people are the source of the problem?
James, dude, this is not what I expected. it's a great point you bring up. Look, the plain simple fact is that people are making businesses work, and they're doing it continually all the time. And taking people out of positions that they're in puts most systems, all of business critical systems on a precipice. And it's because of what people are continually doing, watching out for, integrating with what they are seeing as signals, reacting to and anticipating a whole bunch of potential outcomes that never come to pass because they are there, because they're in the breach. And automation is necessary. It has to be there. But it doesn't come for free. And the gist in the chapter is that humans are the adaptive part of the system, because they can handle things that weren't anticipated.
So in your thesis, I believe the first heuristic you had in there was correlation of a change in software to the undesired behavior. How do you feel about tools that perform change point detection or anomaly detection to assist the automation of incident remediation or even developing context around incidents?
That's a really good question. So remember the heuristic of looking to see what changed, right? Heuristics are used as a way to cope with what otherwise would be a pretty hard problem to handle, right? It helps us narrow, helps us provide a little bit more certainty, even if whatever thing we go to do only actually just gets us started. And so it's a thing that you reach for. Quite often, the reason why heuristics are in play are because they work almost all the time. It's because they're so successful. Now, when they don't, when it turns out not to be the case, that you go to look to see if some changes correlate with some of the signals that you're seeing elsewhere, and you can't detect some sort of correlation. It means that means two things. One, you can start looking elsewhere, and that elsewhere is a lot more broad. It means that if you've at least at this point dismissed a change as being correlated, it means that you have to broaden your horizon of places to look. That's number one. Number two is you now have some data. You now know a thing, or at least you have some signal of a thing that it's not correlated with. And as a result, depending on the change, depending on how much you have, what sort of context you have about how the system's behaving recently, what these other signals that you might be getting from telemetry, that sort of thing, might mean in the case of it's Tuesday afternoons and everybody knows that Tuesday afternoons is this thing or something along those lines. Is it useful to have sort of these automated agents looking to make quick self-healing or sort of auto mitigation stuff? Sure. I think the grounded concrete data would say how effective or how valuable that is. Remember, having an automated agent go and look for a thing that people do is a very reasonable thing, but even when people go to do that, it doesn't necessarily mean that they would take the steps given the context. So there's situations where in an effort to be self-healing or more anything more than just simply raising the awareness that a signal is happening or a mechanism is triggered in some way. Taking action on it, those things can be end up being yet another source of surprises. If that makes sense.
That does make sense. Thank you for that. We're changing topics. So this is a little bit tangential, but you're a co-founder of Adaptive Capacity Labs, which I'm sure I assume working at a startup is time-consuming and stressful. But a big part of your job is also educating people, which is equally difficult. How do you balance the time, and how do you think about the balance between educating people and actually improving things? Have you ever been educating someone or an organization and seen them lose interest before they have a chance to act on the new knowledge that you're trying to impart? How much of an uphill battle is that?
Well, that's a good, yeah. Well, so the organizations that we work with, sometimes they're interested enough to pay us. Whether they understand what they're paying us to do, if they understand that at the very beginning, I can confidently say that they understand it when we're done. I can't say that they confidently understand what they're paying us to do before they start paying us and we start doing it. I'll say that it's not easy to explain or describe a thing to somebody who thinks they already know it, or thinks that that what you're talking about doesn't have the significance at the level of detail that you're talking about. So to some extent, at least at the beginning of all of our projects, there has to be some sort of suspension of disbelief. Usually what happens is that the pain experience of incidents inside the organization is generally enough energy to sort of fuel that suspension of disbelief. Like, okay, well, we're here, we're doing this. Let's might as well just listen to these guys for what they've got to say. Somebody told us that they might have something interesting to say, so let's just go with it for a little bit. Do people tend to do they sort of dismiss or just sort of not usually, because people who work with us sign up to do that. So
now I need to step in with a word from our sponsor. When your neighbor's house burns and firebrands fly in the wind, there are thousands who can congratulate themselves on fire-safe roofs. Roofs in shingle form made from John's Manville asbestos, resistant to heat, water, wear, and weather. When you think of asbestos, you think of John's Manville. Casey, I'm really glad I get to read the advertisements these days.
Yeah, I think those are getting better. John, your contribution to this O'Reilly book wasn't the first time you've been a published author. Your book Web Operations has been really helpful to many people. One section in particular stood out to me in chapter 13, How to Make Failure Beautiful, the Art and Science of Postmortems. I'm going to read the section from this chapter. Determining the root cause should go without saying, but I can't tell you the number of times I've been in a postmortem where participants spent tons of time debating each possible remediation item or the number of customers affected, only to find that they had wasted their time because they didn't have the right root cause. What's the best way, the best practice to go about finding the real root cause so we can make our failures beautiful?
Oh, that's I didn't write that. I was young I didn't know any better. I'm just really sorry. I'm sorry. That's I does Eric Clapton look back every now and then and think, I shot the sheriff was a mistake. I shouldn't have recorded that. I shouldn't have done that. I feel like Eric Clapton right about now.
May we all live long enough to regret our youth. So who would win in a fight, Marvel's Hawkeye or DC's Robin?
Hawkeye.
And you say that because Robin, obviously, he has a genetic predisposition to engage in risky behavior and to die from human error, right? And just look at both of his parents. What can we learn from the Flying Graysons about human error and that tragic accident up on a trapeze bar?
There's a lot to be said about the value of entertainment and acrobats, but the reason why I chose Hawkeye is that Hawkeye wears pants.
Okay.
Robin doesn't wear pants.
He wears tights or something.
It just doesn't. Yeah. I mean, bow and arrow. Come on.
Pants are necessary in a fight.
I think it's some sort of athletic wear. Like they're tight pants, but I'm pretty sure he wears pants sometimes.
Yes. It's So you're not just so Casey. From time to time, you're not just Thanos, but you're also a Robin apologist.
Whew. Okay, so in your work, you often make a convincing case against human error, attributing human error as a root cause or a cause for failure, or even a focus for incident investigation. In a seminal work by Professor James Nice and Professor Sidney Decker, When Ghosts Can Talk, Informant Reality and Ethnographic Policy, which is probably the most important and recognized work, they argue that other than human persons should be taken seriously as an object of interest when doing ethnographic research, because it isn't the researcher's job to apply a Western lens or determine reality, but rather to understand the reality of the subject. And this reminds me of personal experience. A long time ago, when I worked in a helium mine in Germantown, Ohio, one year I went up to West Portland in eastern New York, there on Lake Erie for Christmas. And I was making my way back and stopped in Ashtabula for a few nights up in the northeastern corner of Ohio. Then I planned to make my way down through New Philadelphia before swinging towards Archer's Fork. So now back then there was a train for the well-to-do taking people from Buffalo to Cleveland, the Lakeshore Railroad, if I recall correctly. And as it approached the town, the Ashtabula Bridge gave out and almost 100 people fell to their death. I mean, you could hear it from downtown almost a mile away. It was the worst train accident in the country's history. Now, we all knew Charles Collins would take the blame for that accident. He was the inspector for the bridge in an official capacity, and he certainly paid for the price for that. But unofficially, we all knew that witchcraft was to blame. So what do you say to that? Do you allow for the existence of other than human persons' error? And if so, how would you apply a behavioral protocol analysis to establish that link?
You had me at behavioral protocols. It's a trick question. It's the question stands on the idea that error can be found in some sort of objective way, embodied in a person or not. And that is where I would say the question is invalid.
Well, we do have some other questions from our audience. Maybe we could switch to those. They might be slightly more valid.
Sure.
Okay, let's switch to our first one.
My question is, what's the best metric for measuring the resilience of an organization?
Oh, God. Okay.
Were you able to hear the question?
Yeah, I heard the question. Yep, thank you. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, okay, we can switch to the next question. Here's call-in question number 2.
Hi, John. My name is Sue, and I have a leadership question for you. What is the best organizational strategy that you've seen through the length of your career, and why was it you singing lead on Whole Lotta Love in your high school band?
It wasn't Whole Lotta Love, it was rock and roll. For the record, it was rock and roll, it wasn't Whole Lotta Love. Yeah.
Noted.
Am I getting paid for this?
Okay, well, that concludes our show. For a recording of this broadcast, as well as all of our previous broadcasts, type chaos.community into the web browser of your choice. Ending transmission now.